Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this week are freelance German football reporter Alex Schaeffer, GFFM writers Eric Devine and Philip Bargil. In a weekend filled with epic sporting storylines, it looks like we might just have another thrilling finale in Ligue 1. The title race is as hot as ever, the European race is pretty topsy-turvy at the moment, and the relegation fight is turning into a real Royal Rumble. But before all that, and a look at the midweek European fixtures, here are the latest headlines. Liga was back in action Friday as things kicked off with Nice recording their third straight win, 2-1 at Lille, with Mario Balotelli recording a brace, a result that sees them need just one more win to clinch third place and Champions League football next season. Monaco were also on the road, winning 1-0 at Angers in a nervy encounter on Saturday afternoon. In the multiplex, the relegation battle has been whipped into a frenzy, with each of the bottom three winning. Lorient's 4-1 win at Lyon was arguably the most surprising result, even with the hosts likely distracted ahead of Thursday's visit from Besiktas. But Les Merlus were not the only side to buck trends, as Nancy scored 3 goals in a league match for the first time this season, knocking back an injury-hit Rennes 3-0 at home, while Bastia kept themselves in the conversation with a 2-1 win against also relegation-threatened Dijon. Bordeaux got back to winning ways, moving ahead of Marseille, as Valentin Varda netted a brace to lead the hosts past Metz 3-0, while Montpellier ended a 5-match winless run with a 2-0 victory at Caen. Sunday offered less in the way of excitement, at least, as Marseille's trip to Toulouse ended in a scoreless draw before Nantes controversially were denied a penalty at Saint-Etienne, settling for a 1-1 draw. Sunday's final match had Guingamp falling 4-0 at the Parc des Princes, the hosts keeping the pressure on leaders Monaco with a brace from Edison Cavani. In Ligue 2, upstart Nîmes notched their 4th win in 5 matches to move to within a point of the playoff spot, while with the top 2, Strasbourg and Brest, only drawing, Lens have a chance to go second this evening at Ajaccio. And that's all for the news. But remember, for all the latest headlines, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start this week with a preview of tomorrow's Champions League tie between Monaco and Borussia Dortmund. For that, we welcome Alex Schaeffer to the show. Thank you for joining us, Alex.
Thank you for having me on.
Delighted to have you. So Dortmund come into this tie after that tough 4-1 loss to Bayern Munich at the weekend. How much did that game and result take out of Thomas Tuchel's side ahead of this match?
Yeah, not the best result to come into this game with, but I don't think Thomas Tuchel and Dortmund were expecting much from the game beforehand. Anyway, I mean, Dortmund had a lot of injury trouble coming into it. They had the likes of Marco Reus, Sandro Schürrle, Kagawa, and others all out injured. So they had a young team. Ousmane Dembele was starting, as you all know, the French teenager. He's obviously a pivotal player in the squad at the moment, but Pulisic and Paslak, teenagers as well, were starting. So, Tuchel said after the game that Dortmund had no chance against Bayern Munich, which became even more difficult after they conceded 2 goals from 2 chances in the first 10 minutes. But I don't think it's taken a lot out of them. I think what Tuchel wants now is a response. That's what he needs now. He said that he doesn't want just these big names that have been missing in the last few weeks. He doesn't just want them back. He wants them to bring back that energy and that passion in the team that they've sort of lost over the last few weeks. Because it's going to be an incredibly intense game against Monaco with a lot of attacking football. So despite a disappointing defeat, which sort of amplified the gulf in class between the two sides at the moment in Dortmund and Bayern, I think Tuchel and Dortmund are excited and determined ahead of this Monaco clash, rather than sort of dwelling on the result that's obviously a big disappointment from the weekend.
Yeah, and let's talk about their recent form, because it's been relatively up and down all season. They're currently 4th in the Bundesliga behind a couple of real surprise packages, really. They've been a little bit weak in defence, although obviously their attack with the amount of young players and great players going forward has been relatively strong. Have they got a strong enough defence to really deal with someone like Monaco, especially with that home game first and the way goals being so crucial in Champions League ties? Are they strong enough at the back?
It's very difficult to say, because Dortmund's way of playing is much like Monaco's, where they sort of go into games thinking we're just going to score more than the opposition. They've been trying a new system at the moment in the last few months in this season with sort of 3 central defenders at the back. They've been swapping around between Socrates and Bartra, and Ginter's been playing there as well. But fans aren't too sure about Matthias Ginter. He might be leaving in the summer, so there's a bit of concern about that. So yeah, as you said, they've had a very up and down season, and it's resulted in them conceding more goals than they would have wanted to, and that's why they're 1 point behind Hoffenheim in 4th place at the moment, which will only get them a playoff Champions League spot. So I think Dortmund, they're very, very good at home. They're unbeaten in, I think it's 34 games at home, which is an incredible tally. So at home, with that fan base behind them, they certainly care a lot less about defence and more about attack. So I think for Dortmund, against Monaco, it's going to be a difficult task because they're a team that are playing in a very similar way, which doesn't happen very often to Dortmund at the moment. So much attacking talent. I think Dortmund will probably concede a couple of goals, but they've got the talent and ability up front to outscore Monaco as well. So I think Tuchel will just be hoping that a bit of experience between Socrates and Bartra might shine through, which hasn't been seen, as you said, in the last few weeks.
Yeah, and just a quick mention on player fitness heading in. We've heard that Marco Reus is back in the squad ready for this game, and there's a couple more that might be coming through back in the fold. Are Dortmund still at full strength, or are they still missing a few ahead of this one?
They're still missing a few. Obviously, it's been a huge topic of conversation for Dortmund over the last few weeks, and Tuchel was talking about it again today. He said that it's looking better for Kagawa and Weigl, who both missed out at the weekend, ahead of tomorrow. Lucas Piszczek, they're going to see about training, which has just actually happened this evening. Marco Reus trained with the team yesterday. As you mentioned, he looks like he's going to be back in the squad, probably starting from the bench. The only players that are going to be missing out that might have been in with the chance of playing are Gonzalo Castro and Sebastian Rueda, who have both missed out on training this evening. So not quite full strength, but for Dortmund to have Kagawa, Weigl, Piszczek and Reus back is enormous. That can't go understated.
Yeah, and it's not a bad choice to have someone like Marco Reus come off your bench when you start with Ousmane Dembele in front of him anyway. As for Monaco, Eric, there's a couple of players missing, obviously. Djibril Sidibe's obviously missing through appendicitis, and Bakayoko is suspended. How big are those two misses for Monaco, especially in a away fixture?
Well, I think this is interesting. I think that this might be that rare occasion when Leonardo Jardim does take a more conservative approach. I've watched both of Dortmund's last 2 matches against Hamburg last midweek and against Bayern, and my impression was, not having seen them too much in this calendar year, I'd watched quite a bit of them in the group stages, that they can certainly be got at, and that presents I think Hamburg could have perhaps got something more out of that game had they been a little bit more clinical. I don't know if you'd disagree with that, Alex. And Hamburg are, again, not exactly a top-level side in Germany.
Oh, I'd agree with that completely, definitely. It was 2 late goals for Dortmund made it 3-0. It was certainly not a 3-0 win for Dortmund, and they really made it difficult for themselves. So, Hamburg fighting against relegation at the end of this season, as they have been doing for like the last 4 or 5 years, definitely could have got a draw out of that game at the Signal Iduna Park.
Right. So, I think that presents a real difficult choice for Leonardo Jardim. I think that with Bakayoko out and with Sidibe out, that you have an opportunity to play a little bit more conservatively, to bring in João Moutinho and to play Fabinho, who's the more defensive of the 2 central midfielders between he and Bakayoko, to sort of keep Dortmund at bay. But the question is, given how important I think away goals could potentially be in this tie, is losing 1-0 or say maybe 2-1 to Dortmund and playing a more conservative approach necessarily the wisest thing to do if that were to come off as the result? I think that would make things quite difficult for the return leg, and I think that Jardim has to stick with what he knows and to continue to attack, even if his personnel is slightly different. I know Arsenal fans will have not too fond memories of Mami Touré in a previous Champions League fixture 2 years ago when he was instrumental in helping defeat Arsenal in the round of 16, 2015. So he's certainly capable going forward as well. Probably even a little bit better than Sidibe defensively, at least positionally. He's certainly quick. He's perhaps not as physically imposing. But I don't think that Monaco really miss a beat. I think the inclusion of Moutinho is going to allow them not to be quite as dynamic going forward, but is going to allow them to operate with a bit more craft. I mean, Moutinho is someone who has a better eye for a pass than Bakayoko, but is perhaps not as disruptive of a presence in central midfield. So perhaps a little bit more possession-oriented for Monaco, but I don't think that they should take any opportunity to sort of dial back the intensity of their attack.
Philip, I wanted to talk about Bakayoko again, and also the likelihood that Moutinho will be the one to replace him. Obviously, it was the other central midfielder in that Coupe de la Ligue final in Fabinho that was replaced, and they really struggled in that midfield area. Are you worried that without Bakayoko and having someone like Moutinho in there, that they might lose something against a team that's so good going forward as Dortmund?
Well, first of all, just like Eric, I do believe that Jardim does need to think long and hard about his game plan and not just play his regular game of, oh, well, we've got a great team going forward, so we'll probably score lots of goals, and here's hoping we'll score more goals than the opposition, which is what happened against Manchester City, which is what happens basically every weekend this season. I also agree on the fact that Sidibe won't be sorely missed. I think he actually hasn't been that not that great in the past few weeks. So not exactly great news for Dortmund. I think Toure is an okay understudy, and he can do the job. And regarding that, I would still want Monaco to play some kind of a 4-3-3 with Fabinho and Moutinho being not as adventurous going forward as they usually are, or rather having a rather less attacking 4-4-2 that Jardim usually uses. I mean, we have this Dortmund side who I believe just like haven't watched Dortmund all that often this past season. I do believe they play with a back three and five guys in midfield, notably with Dembele, who started the season on the wing and now playing in central midfield, I believe. And this is a very strong, shall we say, formation to play against a 4-4-2, especially if Jardim thinks that, I can play with two strikers up front and at least we'll score a couple of goals. I mean, this type of thing just doesn't work over 90 minutes. That's my big worry. That's really is my big worry. But yeah, I do believe that if Moutinho and Fabinho play quite tight, then Monaco maybe won't be conceding 5 or 6 goals this time, which I really hope they don't.
And there's a million people at home hoping that both of them do, I think, at the moment. Alex, I wanted to talk about, there's plenty of young players you could pick out of Borussia Dortmund at the moment with the amount of incredible signings they've had. But there's one relatively homegrown talent in Christian Pulisic who's been really glinting the eye this season recently. And is he in possibly for a start? And if he does, is he someone who could be really make an impact for them?
Yeah, he's likely to start, I think, because of the injury worries. As you've said already, the formation sort of set up for now with Dembele playing a more central role, which he's expected to do as well, with Pulisic starting from the wing. And he's just been a revelation this season. He hasn't particularly played well in every single game, and he hasn't exactly, lattered the stats, but he's made an impact in every game because of the way that he attacks. He's exactly the kind of player that Dortmund love to have and Tuchel wants to have in this formation. This sort of front five, you could say, with Aubameyang at the top. They want all this line of 4 midfielders. They want them all to get forward and produce and sort of have that freedom to be able to show what they can do. That's why Ousmane Dembele has been so impressive because of the way that he can play with his feet. Marcel Schmelzer said that the Frenchman, it doesn't look like he has hips sometimes in training because he's so skillful. But for Pulisic, it's mainly because he's so low to the ground. He's got a very low centre of gravity. He's very difficult to take the ball away from. He's quite strong, actually, in a challenge as well. And he just loves to run at opponents, which is what I think Tuchel loves most about him. He has no fear, even though he's a teenager, coming over from America as well at a young age to join Dortmund. He's coming to the team this season. He's been fantastic. So, yeah, he's likely to start. And, he's always a threat because he has no fear.
Yeah, and don't have to keep reminding us about Dembele. We're still crying over here about missing his wonderful antics. As for Monaco, Eric, the attacking options get a little bit interesting with Falcao returning at the weekend, but the one that's on everyone's lips really is Kylian Mbappe Lotan. What's the mixture of those two or Valle-Germain that you would play at the weekend? Is it something more conservative with Germain and Mbappe, or do you risk Mbappe and Falcao, or maybe more conservative with the Colombian and the Frenchman, Germain?
I think it's tough to say. I was fairly underwhelmed by Germain, both at the weekend and in his last league match. But he was brilliant in the Coupe de France against Lille. Again, that's obviously as part of a rotated side. So I think that given his inconsistencies and given the form that both Falcao and Mbappe are on, I think that Jardim needs to opt for those two. I don't think there's any question of the matter. Both of them have a better ability to finish, and I think that if this is a match that does turn on one chance on one occasion, you're going to want to have players whose finishing abilities are of the highest level possible. And I think that is Falcao, and I think that is Mbappe Lotan. Not only that, I think that we also have to look at how their styles differ. That Falcao is a little bit more of a focal point, and that might force Dortmund just a little bit deeper in terms of contending with him in terms of his static play, but also that Mbappe Lotan offers so much more on the counter with his pace and his ability to cut inside from the wing as well. He generally tends to play a little bit wider on the left than do either Germain or Falcao, and that'll allow Monaco to stretch play laterally as well as vertically, which I think is something that shouldn't be underestimated, particularly if Dortmund do end up playing this three at the back. Spaces in behind those wide midfielders are just going to be very key, I think, to Monaco's chances of getting anything from this match. So yeah, I don't think there's any question that Falcao and Mbappe Lotan get the start here.
Yeah, and that full-back position will be the important bit, getting in behind those areas. Philip, just as a bit of a side at the moment, this is going to be a really good game, isn't it? I know it's being listed as maybe the hipster quarterfinal in a sense, but these are two attacking sides that could put on a real show, couldn't they?
Yeah, most of the people I've talked to would say that this game is going to end 6-5 or something like that, and not even on aggregate, given how adventurous they are going forward. I actually don't think that Jardim will be that cautious tomorrow evening, and that Dortmund do score a lot of goals. Saying this, I do think that they're probably not as lethal as last season, and I think that they have. If you look at their goal scoring record in the Bundesliga, they have Aubameyang, who is lethal up front with 25 goals, and then it's pretty much a bit like PSG really when you have Cavani, and then you have the others. You've got Dembele with 6 goals, and then you have a lot of players with 2 or 3 goals. So I think the major factor will also be about shutting Aubameyang up. And I'm not quite sure what happened this summer, or is it maybe Tuchel with a second season syndrome, Alex? But I do reckon that Dortmund are less, goal happy this season. Not sure if that makes, if that's the ongoing.
Yeah, with other players getting involved, you mean? Yeah. I think, to be honest, I think it's just the way that they play, where they sort of. I think the main focal point of Dortmund's attack is getting wide and getting crosses in, these sort of low crosses that dart in towards Aubameyang and just sort of cause mayhem in the box, really. I think, I'm not sure if I'm 100% correct, but I'm pretty sure that all 25 of Aubameyang's league goals have come from inside the box. He's just that sort of attacker who will get on the end of crosses, or a cute finish, or maybe a run through one-on-one, and he'll take it into the box and have a nice finish. But the sort of focal point of all of Dortmund's attack is Aubameyang and his abilities to finish. And there have actually been a lot of games this season where Aubameyang has not finished well at all. He's had a lot of games where he's really come under fire, especially Benfica away in the last round of the Champions League where they lost 1-0. He had 3 or 4 really great chances in the first half where he definitely should have scored. And I think, it means that other players aren't getting involved as much. Obviously, as you mentioned, Dembele only having 6 goals as the second top goal scorer, because there's no real sort of second striker. Adrian Ramos is gone now, and Aubameyang is that focal point. So yeah, I think that's the reason why it's really come about, because they sort of search for Aubameyang to finish off everything inside the box. He's just that kind of a striker.
So basically, what I just said is that I'm not saying that Monaco shouldn't be afraid of Dortmund, but that they're probably not as fighting as last season, and I'm pretty sure that this comment is going to come and bite me in the ass in a couple of weeks. But I mean, are German football fans in general scared of Monaco? I mean, what's the general outcome? Is it Monaco are a good team? We need to be cautious, but we still have more experience in the Champions League, recent experience, and that will progress, or is it ultra cautious because there's Falcao, there's Mbappé Lotin, there's Bernardo Silva, there's Thomas Lemar, and all these very, very exciting players? I mean, are Dortmund actually scared of Monaco?
I think before the Man City game, no one really sort of noticed it. I think there's
just like the rest of Europe.
Yeah, exactly. Because in Germany especially, I mean, I've never seen any coverage of French football or any highlights or anything being shown on TV. I'm not sure whether there is any or not, but I haven't seen it. And it's just sort of one of those leagues that sort of goes under the radar. In Germany, it's the Premier League, Bundesliga, and a little bit of the Spanish leagues, but that's it really. And so the only chance they really get to see the French teams is through the Champions League. And I think, as you said, Germany and the rest of Europe stood up when they beat Manchester City in the fashion that they did, and then sort of noticed, oh wait, they're actually top of the French league, and they're doing really well. So it's not just this one game. So I think Dortmund will have done their preparation. I think the fans haven't heard or seen much of Monaco this season, which is sort of expected when the coverage just isn't that big in Germany. But the team, Tuchel's spoken a lot today about how much of an admirer he is of Monaco, and how they had a big meeting tonight apparently about how to combat their attacking play, Monaco's attacking play, that is. So they understand the threat, and I'm sure the fans will see it in full force over these two legs.
What I really I'm quite sorry, Nathan. I'm quite wary of is I'm not sure if Dortmund will treat the DFB Pokal semi-final as seriously as they did of their Klassiker on Saturday, which was not very seriously. But Champions League looks pretty sorted for them anyway, because they're just 1 point behind Hoffenheim, and of course they'd rather finish third, so they don't have to have the added pressure of playing a playoff in August. But their league is pretty much over. I mean, those last 6 games aren't much, whereas Monaco's the last, I think it's 6 games as well.
Yeah.
It is 6 games. They have to win everything if they want to win the league, which makes a bit of a difference, in how each of the sides are going to approach this game. And this is what scares me. This is may fall into Dortmund's hands, because this is massive for Tuchel. I mean, is biggest game of his career yet?
That's a very difficult question. I think obviously he's coming to Dortmund, and as you mentioned, no one's been able to catch Bayern this season. I mean, Leipzig put up a very good fight throughout the first half of the season to finish the first half of the season on top. But that sort of top 4 is set now in Germany. It just depends, obviously, as you mentioned, where Hoffenheim or Bayern Dortmund are going to fit third or fourth. But this is right now. I think this is the biggest month, I would say. I'm not sure about the biggest game, but the biggest month in Tuchel's career for Dortmund. He's got 9 games in the month of April. This is, I think this is the 4th game. Sorry, and it's a huge month, especially with these injury problems that he's got. So for him to be able to combat not losing too much ground on Hoffenheim, who are in fantastic form, they just beat Bayern as well. Not losing too much ground on them, and trying to get past Monaco, it's massively important for Dortmund.
Yeah,
because the return game is on.
It's in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's in 2 weeks. So Dortmund have loads of time to
recover.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I banged on the Monaco drum being the best team in Europe back in December, but no one listened to me then, and that's not a surprise. No one ever listens to me Never mind. Thank you, Alex, for joining us this evening. Everyone at home, follow me, Alex Chaffer, on Twitter. He's always a great read and a great listen. Thank you for joining us, mate.
Pleasure, and good luck for tomorrow, guys.
Yeah, good luck to you as well. At least it's a nice, friendly end to it, at least. Let's move on now to Liga action. And there's another side in European action this week, at least, and as Lyon are taking on Besiktas. But before we talk about the game itself, Eric, how important is progression now for the Europa League for Lyon, with them almost mathematically being out of that Champions League hunt via a third place finish in Liga?
I guess it's hard to say in terms of importance. I mean, importance for keeping the players, importance for the team's progression. I guess what sort of angle are you?
Go for all of those angles, yeah.
Sure. So I think that given Manchester United's sometimes inconsistencies, although not in the Europa League to a large extent, Lyon have to fancy their chances in this competition. There really aren't a whole lot of other standout sides. I mean, Schalke have looked good as well, but they're certainly. I certainly thought that Roma were one of the best two teams, along with Manchester United, in the competition. And yeah, it was nervy, but Lyon went through. That was really impressive. So they have shown that they can get things done in this competition, and winning it's not out of the question. So I think this needs to be the focus. I think that realistically, you'd have to go back to Lyon. I think probably losing away to Caen as to when I thought their chances of getting third were gone. I mean, I know Caen can be tough at home, but that was back in early February. I want to say they lost 3-2, and I think from that point on, the gap has been 6 or 7 points or more, and it's grown. You know, Nice have dropped points at times. I think about that match against Nantes the other week, but Lyon have consistently failed to capitalize. I think that their focus on the Europa League has been warranted, given how open the competition this is this year, and I think that I'd be exceptionally surprised if they slipped below fifth. I think Bordeaux still have half a chance of catching them in fourth, but I think that a focus on the Europa League is what's best. I think that we should probably consider Lacazette gone, Genesio gone in the summer, but to attract a necessary quality of player to replace Lacazette, necessary quality of manager to replace Genesio, an improvement that is, I think that Champions League football is going to be a huge attraction. I'm not saying that Europa League, Lyon will be a seeded team in the group stage if they finish fourth. It isn't the end of the world, but with that as a carrot to dangle, their chances of them keeping a player like, say, Corentin Tolisso has also been on the move. That's gonna make their chances of doing that much better. I think we've come to realize that, you know, a player only has, you know, perhaps 10 or 12 seasons in which to reach some level of success. And so even if you're Corentin Tolisso and you're 22, 23 this summer, your chances of playing in the Champions League are no sure thing. You know, unless you're playing for a Paris Saint-Germain or a Bayern Munich, a team that's going to dominate their league every year, there's a real opportunity there that can be fleeting. And I think that these players have been good servants to Lyon, and if the club can't continue to offer them Champions League, it has to be faced with the reality of being forced to let them go. So it's incredibly important. I think that third place in the league's been gone for a long time now, and this is a chance to, you know, get a major trophy, make a statement, and to continue on with, you know, I think they're somewhat halting at times evolution. I think that we've seen this club ebb and flow from looking back 2009, 2010, when they were spending $60 million on players, bringing Lissandro, Alex Sissoko, Johan Gourcuff, Jimmy Briand, Ederson. You know, not all these players worked out, obviously. A lot of them didn't work out. But there was a level of ambition at that point that was focused on bringing veteran players and improving what was already a good side consistently in the knockout rounds of the Champions League. But that ended up hamstringing them financially, and now they had to go back to basics, relying on these young players who have come through for them by and large. I think that even players like Rashid Ghazal, who's been someone on the fringes of the team, have been useful. Tolisso and Lacazette, certainly. We've seen Diakabi, the now departed Umtiti. That reliance on these younger players has been rewarded. But in order to keep that continuum going and keep that upward trend going, now we've got this Chinese investment, the purchase of a player like Memphis Depay, his performances aside, show a decent level of ambition. And I think that in order for that trend to really continue on the arc that the club want, that Jean-Michel Aulas, the chairman, wants, Champions League's really important, and Lyon have to put all their focus on this competition, because they do have at least a puncher's chance against any team left in the competition. And as we've seen, knockout football results can often surprise us.
Let's talk about Lyon and this fixture now then. And Philippe, with the French side being at home, what do they need to get out of this to have a positive result, especially with, a trip to Turkey? If you're in behind, it could be a really difficult situation to be in. So what did Lyon need out of this game on Thursday?
I think a quite comfortable 2-3, even 4-goal difference win would probably do the trick. I'm not. We just talked about Borussia Dortmund, where all of us watched a couple of games. I mean, I haven't seen Besiktas play at all. I'm not quite sure what the level of Turkish football is, but there's not much. Turkish side in Europe, so chances are it's not quite good. But we said a couple of weeks before with Eric. I mean, I'd be really disappointed if you got knocked out at this stage of the competition. I mean, extremely disappointed, because once you get past that, you've got the winner of Anderlecht versus Manchester United, you've got the winner of Celta Vigo, and to be honest, I wouldn't unfancy Lyon's chances against Manchester United. Depends where Manchester United would be in the Champions League. You've got the winner of Celta Vigo versus Genk. Again, I would fancy Lyon against either of those sides, and the winner of Ajax versus Schalke. Again, yes. So this is basically a statement to say that Lyon are still in Europe, and the only side with Monaco to still be in Europe. We're quite lucky to have a club in at this stage of the competition in the Europa League. It hasn't happened in ages, absolute ages. I think the last one was Marseille back in 2004, maybe.
Lyon were in the quarters, and they lost to Juve in 2013-14.
2013-14, yeah. I just think there's something to do there, and this is where Lyon do need. I mean, I would love them to win the Europa League. That would mean Champions League football and keeping those talents, because I don't know, but without this Premier competition, without the Champions League, I mean, Eric, aren't you afraid that you are going to get pillaged this summer? Like every single decent player is going to leave.
I am, but if they can find a replacement for Lacazette, I'm not that worried. Honestly, I think that Nice are going to struggle with the Champions League if they do qualify. They did struggle with the Europa League. Balotelli might go. Ricardo Pereira's only on loan. There's no guarantee that they can continue that level of success. Monaco might face a similar thing. Marseille, I don't, even with Antonio Bezerra coming in, I don't believe that they can spend the money they have responsibly. Nantes might kick on, but I don't see any reason for Lyon to have any expectation that they would finish a little bit lower. They would finish any lower down the table, and I think certainly an improvement's a real possibility. Given how well Leonardo Jardim, does he stay? I think that there's a real potential for Lyon to, as surprising as it may sound, even losing both Lacazette and Tolisso, if that happens this summer, that they could kick on by giving more chances to younger players. Again, I'm not saying that replacing Lacazette is anything close to a given. It's going to be a huge challenge. I mean, to even identify a player that could deliver in the same way he does is a huge ask. But that being said, there's every chance that Lyon can not only not be too negatively affected, but they can bring on. I mean, look at Toussaint, right? I think this is a player, and Diakabi as well. These two young players, 19 and 20 years old, have come virtually out of nowhere. I mean, Diakabi, they're both youth internationals, but I think that, I had to recognize these players prior to the season, but I don't think that anybody but obsessive Lyon fans or players or people that are obsessed with, French reserve sides had any awareness of these players. But this is the thing. There's continual quality coming out of that academy, and those players have continued to blossom when given their chance. Lyon have continued to add in smart, canny buys of young players, the likes of Cornet, Mamana in particular, I think come to mind. And I think that there is a level of sustainability there in this close program. And if they bring in, they sell Tolisso for 30 and Lacazette for 45, I think that you can spend 2/3 of that on a decent striker and use the rest of it maybe on a left back. That's another position I think they need some help with. And, perhaps bolster midfield as well, maybe another winger. And I think that Lyon will keep clicking. I think the manager, though, is the big thing for me. I think that they need to really take a close look at who can get the balance right between giving chances to young players and making new players from outside the club fit into the squad as well, which has been an issue in the past few years.
Because, of course, by pillage, I meant, basically Tolisso and Lacazette, which I honestly hope they stay in Ligue 1, because I don't. Yeah, it would be a real shame to lose those two. And I'm only speaking of two very bright and very talented Lyon players. I'm not even going to mention half of Monaco and his side.
Let's go back to sort of the game at hand then now. And Eric, I wanted to get you on who. Well, Lyon have a lot of options really in those attacking areas, but who needs to start for you, and what style of formation does Genesio need to go for? Because he's mixed it up in the last few weeks in different variations and with varying degrees of success. What do you think is their best outlook?
I think that in this match, at home, they need to go for an all-out attacking approach, and I think that that's a 4-2-3-1 with Tolisso played off of Lacazette, Valbuena on the left, and I want to say Gazal on the right. I think that I know he's been a little bit petulant this season, but he offers more consistency, more quality on the ball than certainly does Cornet, who's a decent player. He's still young, but he's a bit of a pace merchant at this point in time. And I think that we just haven't seen enough consistency from Nabil Fekir, particularly against top quality opposition. Maybe Fekir is a good option off the bench because he could play as a striker. He could play in a number 10 if Lyon want to alter formations on the fly. But yeah, a 4-2-3-1 with Tolisso playing as a second striker. I know that's not something we've seen a whole lot of this season. We had seen it when they played a 3-5-1-1 in the Champions League at times, and it was relatively effective. I mean, I think that Tolisso is a fantastic player, but when he's played as part of a midfield two, I think his talents are wasted. And I also think that not only are his attacking talents wasted, but it just lowers the level of solidity in that defensive midfield a little bit too much. I much prefer Luka Toussaint, who's a little bit more prosaic, but is more responsible defensively and more physically robust than his Tolisso as a partner for going along.
So you mentioned Cornet, and to me, he's exactly the type of players that Lyon have a young talent that needs to actually make a step up next season, if not at the end of this season with the Europa League. But next season just shows that he's been there for a couple of years now, and that he needs to put his stamp on this side, just like maybe Lacazette did all those years ago, even though it's not exactly the same thing. And we're all praying for Fekir.
So, I mean, fair enough. I mean, there are probably some parallels to be drawn between Cornet and Gazal. I think Cornet had a great season last year, playing on the wing in a 4-3-3 once Genesio had taken over. He and Gazal flanking Lacazette. They were key to Lyon picking up form during the back half of the season to get back into the Champions League. But Lacazette, if you recall, started as a winger. They had a 4-4-2 double pivot. Lacazette was usually on the left. Jimmy Briand was on the right, and the strikers were Gomes and Lisandro Lopez. So he is someone who started life as a striker and started life as a winger, didn't really become a striker until Lisandro Lopez left. So I'm not saying that I think that Lacazette's a lot more adept with the ball at his feet. He's also more responsible defensively. But I think Cornet could evolve into a striker. Am I saying he needs to be given a chance to replace Lacazette, next season? No, I don't think that's the case. But I think that there is certainly more potential to come from him. I mean, he is only, I think, 20 years old. I'm not sure when his birthday is. I know he's born in '96. So there's. Yeah, that's exactly the case. So, Lacazette, when he was 20 years old, I think he, probably scored 4 goals for Lyon or something like that. I know he had that big goal in the Champions League against Applewell, but he hadn't really done much in terms of raw statistics, especially when you look at Cornet's progression from this point in time. So, yeah, there is every opportunity for him to grow. I think that we can't really put too much in what Lyon are going to do next season, because without Lacazette, who knows how this team is even going to line up tactically. There's a lot of question marks surrounding this season, and I think that Cornet is just one of them. He's a very intriguing player, but I don't think he's quite ready to, given Lyon's aspirations, be billed as perhaps the main striker going forward.
Let's get quick predictions then, Eric. What do you think in this one?
2-1 Lyon. So a decent result, but I'd still be a little bit worried about the return leg.
Philip?
5-2.
An exciting one.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a little bit cautious.
Something like that.
I saw Besiktas a couple of times in the Champions League, and I did see the second leg of their game briefly before on a couple of Thursdays ago, and I think they're not too bad. I think this might be quite an interesting game and slightly closer than we're maybe giving it credit for. I think it might be 1-1. That's going to be my sneaky one. And Lyon going nervously to Turkey, which is not always good to go to a place like that. It's a difficult place to go to and get any kind of result from. But let's sort of morph this talk into the relegation fight that went a bit crazy the weekend, because if you remember our talk of relegation a few weeks ago, well, completely disregard everything we said, and because the form book went out the window a little bit, almost every side down that bottom end broke the accumulators of everyone this weekend, and now there's a bunch of teams in real trouble, Philip. Let's talk about Lorient first, who won their 3rd game in a row against Lyon 4-1. That's pretty mental, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually a nice little transition between a side who's in Europe, who just got comprehensively beaten, by a side who is trying to stay in the country's top division. And actually, I mean, in a way, I'm not quite surprised that Lorient offered some kind of resistance, but winning 4-1, it's not exactly the same thing as offering resistance. So yes, this the win at Nancy 2 weeks ago was, or was it 3 weeks ago? It was 3 weeks ago. It was absolutely pivotal. Then winning at home to Caen was absolutely vital as well. But this. It's not like it came out of nowhere, because Lorient are not a bad side, and they have their moments where they can defend well. They've got the defenders who have the experience, and Lyon have this kind of defense that is sometimes quite leaky. Yeah, it's just not this type of result that you're not completely 100% surprised with, because it's a side looking from the up, who really want to stay up. They're fighting for their lives, and they can pull out one of those immense result. It does their goal difference a lot of good. With Lyon beating Metz in midweek, they're not the worst goal difference in the league now. I do know Metz have a game in hand against PSG that won't be played in a couple of weeks. Will be played in a bit more than a week from now. But Lorient are just now 2 points behind Metz, and this could be a massive turnaround. I'm not even talking about Bastia winning at Dijon. That may come on later, I assume. But this changes absolutely everything. And there's a piece I wrote saying, Nancy and Bastia are going down. Lorient may make the playoff. The rest are safe. Just don't listen to me, because this changes absolutely everything. You've got 6 sides in 5 points, and most of them with a quite similar goal difference. Only Dijon have a decent goal difference in -10.
It's getting absolutely crazy in it. Eric, you obviously watched Lyon's game against Lorient, and let's talk about the away side, who were really irresistible at times, and they're finally starting to find their attacking feet, where we have always said all season that's where their strength lies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the players' quotes after the game mirrored that too. And in my piece in The Guardian, we had Benjamin Mukanjo and Arnold Wemba in particular, but also Jeremy Aliadier had a couple quotes after the game that it's a matter of self-belief at this point. Bernard Cassoni, I know we haven't really seen him as being exactly a brilliant appointment for manager, but I think the same thing was thought about for Pascal Dupraz coming into Toulouse last season. They're a manager rather, whose reputation is not of the highest level, but they've been able to assess what this team needs and push the buttons correctly. And playing that, go 4-4-2 attack was really great to see. And this is the thing that I think really makes football in Ligue 1 so special, is that teams are willing to play attacking football to get out of trouble. And we've seen now. I have utmost respect for other leagues in Europe, but if we look at a team like a Darmstadt, a Middlesbrough, Granada, Sporting Gijón, Palermo, there's a real layers of negativity that tend to surround teams at the bottom in terms of the way they play. I think Nancy are generally pretty negative, but the rest of those teams, and Lorient are chief among them, I think they have the 9th or 10th best goal score total in the league, are willing to play attacking football and take some risks when the chips are down. And that's what has made and is making Ligue 1 such an attractive league this year. These teams aren't trying to defend and get 0-0 or 1-1 results. They're trying to win. They're trying to win 3-2 or win 4-1 and play with not recklessness, but with a level of attacking intent that fits their needs at a given point in the season. And I mean, we even look at a team like, say, Caen or Metz with Cheikh Diabate having come into the side, and even they play with some level of ambition. I mean, Montpellier are another team that are down near the bottom, could get sucked in, but are also incredibly attractive with Riyad Boudebouz and the winger Jonathan Akone on loan from PSG. Now that he's back to fitness, he's another one. Almost every single one of these teams, save Nancy, but again, 3 goals at the weekend, are really attractive and really compelling to watch. And that attacking mentality is just a brilliant thing to see, and I long may it continue for the teams that are down near the bottom.
Yeah, and let's talk about Bastia now, Philip, and a team that a couple of weeks ago we said were dead. This was a really big game against Dijon, another team in and around them. They managed to win. Not only that, away from home. Not only that, they didn't pick up a single booking in this game. Is this a one-off for a team like Bastia this season, or is this maybe a start of something?
Saying this, before Lorient's dramatic win at Nancy 3-2, as they were 2-0 down, Bastia were not losing at home, which was not the case of basically the whole of the bottom half of Ligue 1. Which is a good thing. I mean, just four defeats is not that big at all for the club that's bottom of the table. I mean, even Lyon lost more home games than Bastia. So there was always a chance that if they kept not losing games at home, which they didn't because they lost at home to. It was Lille, their first defeat of 2017, I think, at home. They lost at home to Lille 1-0, and then you thought, okay, well, they're down because if they can't even get a point at home, then they're never going to get anything at all, and they need roughly 40 points to stay up. So there's no chance. And then you've got this win at Dijon, which comes out of nowhere. It just to me, it's. I want to say it's a one-off because it's one of those crazy weekends where you say, okay, well, the sides that are usually not good at all are winning, and sides that are very hard to beat, like Dijon, lost at home, which is, extremely, extremely strange. And now Bastia have a chance. They don't have that bad of a goal difference. They're just 3 points from that playoff spot, with a better goal difference than Lorient. If you look at well, that's the thing, though. If you look at as they run it, they do have to play Lyon, Bordeaux, PSG, and Marseille, which is not that easy, even on paper. And their last home game is at home to Lorient. I'm still quite pessimistic about their chances of staying up. Yeah, we shall see about who finished 19th. But yeah, very, very tough one. Very tough one. How would you? Well, maybe it's a bit early to be talking about that, Eric. But Bastia against Lyon. I mean, is there a worry there, or
a worry in what sense?
for Lyon not winning or while they're losing?
I'd probably say a 1-1 draw if you asked me to pick the match right now.
Yeah, me too.
I think that Lyon's quote-unquote second string has been poor, and I know we've lauded Depay at times this season, but gosh, his lack of consistency is maddening, and it's without having a go-to attacking player, if you take off Valbuena and Lacazette, as we saw at the weekend, there's just not enough there, and it's frustrating.
Mm. And it gets more interesting, at least, in the bottom of the table, because a side that we think are incredibly negative in a sense, in Nancy, score 3 goals for the first time this season against, admittedly, an injury hit Rennes. Eric, where did that come from?
So I just hearing that word negative, I don't necessarily think that Nancy are negative. I just think they lack quality. We saw a similar side to this back in 2014-15 when Lens were in the division. Lens under, I believe that was Antoine Camboire at the time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
they didn't play negatively. They didn't, cede possession. They didn't sit deep. They tried to play, but the quality of their strikers. I think Pablo Chavarria was one of the main strikers at that point in time. The team also had a young Willem Cyprian. They tried to play, but they just didn't have quality, and I think that's what we've seen with Nancy as well. I mean, Dia had a decent game, but he's been hurt. Junior Dale, Faitou Mawasa's come into the side and has looked pretty decent in recent weeks. Still some issues with discipline there, but he's a fantastic player with the ball at his feet. So it's not that Nancy haven't been trying to attack. It's been a matter of just quality, and I think that teams that do have quality in attack, when you watch them play, it catches the eye a little bit more because they are finishing those chances that they're creating. Whereas, I'm not saying Nancy or Monaco or their Lorient in terms of getting at every single match in terms of trying to get a result, but they aren't. It's not a matter of negativity per se, but really a matter of quality. This team got to the Coupe de la Ligue semifinal. That's not a fluke, right? So they do have a certain level of quality about them. They've also struggled with injury quite a bit, particularly in defense, and they've also had some flip-flopping in goalkeeping, Asembe and Chernik out, et cetera, et cetera. So there's been some ulterior issues. It's not a matter of trying, but I also think Rennes gosh, I don't know what's happened to this team. We had Rich Allen on. We had Rich Allen about 6 weeks ago on the previous show, and we talked about some of his frustrations relating to how Renton handled the transfer window. But, he was saying, we've fallen out of fourth. Maybe there's a possibility. But now, I think Renton had the third worst attack in the league. Gorku's, Johan Gorku's been able to stay fit on the pitch, and they've got no orthodox left back. It's really a mess at that club. So I think the Nazis' result the weekend was certainly a matter of circumstances based on their opponent, but it's not necessarily negativity, but a lack of quality that's simply holding them back. They didn't really, I think for me, make the necessary investment in bringing players in to make them as competitive as perhaps they should be to stay in Liga.
I think Rennes, the best I could describe them is a side that if they have a decent crowd to push them on, and that they're playing against an adversary that isn't that bothered, which doesn't happen often in Liga, then they may win the game. But as soon as they fall against a side that has a target, then they'll just roll over and just not be very good at all. And this is every time I've watched them play, it's just been such how easy it was to discourage them of playing decent football. This is, I mean, they must win some kind of an award for that, because it really doesn't look that hard to not lose against Rennes. And saying about Nossi, Correa did have this video where he said that they had a worse squad this season than last season. And maybe he has a point, because Langlais was sold to Sevilla, and Langlais is not a bad defender.
You've also had Chrétien, who's been injured quite a bit.
Yeah.
Muratori, Kufo, the fullbacks, who I think
he also had strong words about the goalkeeper, but it wasn't the first team goalkeeper, Schernik, who hasn't been quite as good as Ndi Asambi, who's quite an experienced shot stopper, or not too bad for this level. So I'm saying the way I see it is that Nossi didn't want to invest because they weren't really quite sure if they were going to stay in Liga. So yeah, I think they have those type of bouts of not losing sometimes, mainly thanks to Pablo Correa's experience, but that he's doing a not a bad job with the batch of players he has.
No, I would fully agree, and like I said, the only point I might ding him on there is Youssef Benasser. I think that bigger things were expected of him this season.
Yeah.
I do think he's really regressed this season. I'm not even sure if he was in the 18 at the weekend. I mean, he's really taken a step back from the player that Monaco bought last season.
And that'll be an interesting follow-up. And of Rennes, I think it might be a blow-up in the summer and try again, because no one's circling that Rennes-Lille game next weekend, that's for certain. Just to talk about one final game around those teams at the bottom of the table, and that was Montpellier-Caen. Even with a victory, really, for Montpellier, the first in 5 games, it sent Caen further into trouble. But Montpellier aren't completely out of trouble, really, yet. Eric, are they both likely to be there and thereabouts in the summer? I mean, Caen keep flipping between the switch of being out of trouble and then back into trouble, and they can't seem to keep any consistency.
Montpellier, I do hope they stay in the division, but I would probably worry for them quite a bit heading into next summer. I think that they did buy some intriguing players. Mabenza, I think looks interesting. Keegan Dolly, Roussillon, Mukiele. They've managed to get some decent players in his squad, but that defense isn't getting any younger in Hilton and Congre. Boudabous will probably go in the summer. Ikone's look good, but he's only on loan. I imagine they have a hard time keeping hold of Mounier. So I would say they'd probably stay up. The quality of players like Mounier, Cessignon, Boudabous is enough in attack to keep them up. But Caen, I might worry for. I think they're much more likely to get sucked in. They, even with that 3-4-3, I think they've looked a little suspect in defense at times. They've struggled with injuries quite a bit themselves. Ronnie Rodlan had a great start to 2017. He sort of slipped a little bit in recent weeks. Ivan Santini, he's got, I think, 13 goals on the season, but he's a player who's not contributed with the level of consistency and the level of all-around play that we had seen last year from Andy Delors. So I think there's probably more working against Caen than Montpellier. Metz could also be in that discussion as well, but I probably would be the most worried about Caen of any teams outside of the current bottom 3.
So they're certainly doing their most, they're doing their best to be bad, if that makes any sense. Losing at Lorient, losing at home to Montpellier, just not being... They weren't in that kind of position where they could have been out of the woods, and they did have a nice, decent set of results, winning at Saint-Etienne, drawing at Nice. But it's just those 3 defeats, no goal scored. They're really saying, like, okay, we could get out of this struggle, but we just don't want to. It's just so, I don't know, because the chances are there. The chances are there, but I honestly believe that they were quite a bit lucky with the cup over that they had before, and that now everybody is really up for it, and I mean absolutely everyone, and that Caen may be one of the least motivated sides to stay up. That's what it reads. That's what when you watch Caen play. I mean, at Lorient they were man up for a decent part of the match. I think it was. Because Lorient got a sending off in the 49th minute from François Belugou. Just not much of a reaction, and then Patrice Garn was absolutely fuming. He was absolutely furious, and it looks like he doesn't really has that kind of dressing room where the players just don't want to avoid Ligue 2 or the playoff, which is I could see them actually finishing second bottom.
Yeah, and there's two massive games at the weekend. Again, Metz are playing Caen. That'll be important for either of those two. And Montpellier versus Lorient. If Lorient can carry on that form, that'll probably pull them out of that bottom three, at least, of the relegation playoff, and drag Montpellier slightly closer to everyone again. Anyone willing to stick the neck out? But say
Caen playing away to PSG on the final day, just saying.
Yeah, not good.
So that's a bunker, it's they may lose this one.
Anyone sticking the neck out for a name?
Yeah, we could have a surprise. Yeah, I agree.
Let's look at this. Okay, Montpellier win against Lorient. They're 39 points.
I think they'll be safe. Yeah.
I think that's enough for them. Angers are already on 39. They're in good form. They probably won't get anything against PSG, but Lille, same thing. I can't imagine them not getting 3 or 4 points before the season ends. So I think of the teams outside the current bottom three, again, Caen are the most likely to get sucked in. They just look disinterested. I think that's a great way to say it, Philip. And we've seen those 4 teams below them, Nancy, Lorient, Dijon, and Bastia, playing with a degree of motivation and playing with a degree of energy and focus and drive that we're not seeing from them. Perhaps more than any other team in the league, save the likes of Guingamp and Rennes. And that's given the level of talent and each of those teams below them, say perhaps not see, have players that have been in Ligue 1 for a while and have quality. I mean, you look at Crivelli and Saint-Maximin at Bastia, Diony and Tavares at Dijon, and any number of players, Marvo, Mukanjo, Waris at Lorient. They all have weapons, and Caen have that too with Santini, and Julien Ferre, but
Caen was not bad winning at people.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd say Caen probably look more likely to get sucked in than anybody else. It's outside of the current bottom 3 or bottom 4.
They're running out of steam, aren't they? I think a little bit, and that this time of season is not
was running. I mean, surely it can't play in their favor. They're already bottom, and with that running, it just doesn't. I mean, on paper at least. I mean, maybe they'll find some spirited results, but I just don't see them getting something like 10 points, because I honestly believe that with all that many sides being on 31 points, I wouldn't be surprised if the side who finish in 18th has between 37 and 40 points.
Yeah,
which is quite 10 points from Bastia's level now, which means 3 wins. Yeah. 3 wins out of the remaining 6 games. So I just can't quite see, even though I'm very surprised that them winning at Dijon, and I think they'll give a great account of themselves on Sunday against Lyon. Maybe do something at Bordeaux, definitely against Rennes. I just don't see that as being enough.
I mean, the most I can see out of this is 8 points, maybe beat Rennes and Lorient, draw against Bordeaux and Lyon.
6.
PSG aren't going to want to let up. Marseille still don't have Europe wrapped up, and they had them on the last day. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, Bastian Carter this week then.
Yeah. I just try not to bet against the Fioriani, or they might fight back a little bit. That's all that we have time for this week. My thanks to Alex, Eric, and Philip for joining us. Join us for the preview show hosted by Eric on Thursday, and we will see you here at the same time, same place next week. Abianto, and goodbye.